It was precisely at 6:15, on the morning of September the 20th, in the year 1944, that Major Charles Carpenter, a man of 32 years, found himself crouched in the damp, clinging soil beside his aircraft. The plane was a Piper L-4 Grasshopper, a skeletal high-wing observation machine, resting on a muddy, improvised airstrip near the small, battered French town of Arracourt. He was watching the environment with the grim, focused intensity of a man who understood precisely the geometry of the danger unfolding. A thick, pearlescent fog, typical of the Lorraine region in early autumn, was rolling inexorably across the undulating fields, a suffocating blanket beneath which the German 5th Panzer Army was advancing. These were not mere skirmishes. These were heavy, decisive movements. The menacing silhouettes of German Panther tanks were slowly, deliberately moving toward the trapped and desperate American positions. He was watching the environment with the grim, focused intensity of a man who understood precisely the geometry of the danger unfolding. A thick, pearlescent fog, typical of the Lorraine region in early autumn, was rolling inexorably across the undulating fields, a suffocating blanket beneath which the German 5th Panzer Army was advancing. These were not mere skirmishes. These were heavy, decisive movements. The menacing silhouettes of German Panther tanks were slowly, deliberately moving toward the trapped and desperate American positions. The gravity of the engagement that had unfolded over the preceding 2 days was catastrophic and undeniable, revealing the immense scale of the German commitment. The German forces, acting on direct orders to stabilize the collapsing Western Front, had unleashed a massive, brutal counterattack. They had committed an overwhelming force of 262 armored fighting vehicles, a lethal mix of the formidable Panther tanks and supporting heavy, low-profile Sturmgeschütz assault guns against Combat Command A, CCA, of the American 4th Armored Division. The cost in human life and materiel was devastating. Official American reports confirmed that 48 Sherman tanks had been destroyed or severely damaged, representing a crippling loss of offensive and defensive capability for the division. Carpenter, the academic-turned-pilot, understood the deadly, unforgiving mathematical reality of the conflict playing out below him. The formidable German Panther tank, armed with its high-velocity 75mm KWK-42 main cannon, possessed the documented and repeatedly proven capacity to penetrate the relatively thinner, vertically oriented armor of the American M4 Sherman tank at a decisive range of 2,200 yards. This distance provided the German tankers with a crushing, near-insurmountable first-shot advantage. Conversely, the standard American Sherman, equipped with the less potent 75mm M3 main gun, a weapon fundamentally designed for general infantry support rather than dedicated, heavy anti-tank combat, required an extreme proximity, a mere 300 yards to achieve a reliable, armor-piercing kill shot against the Panther's thickly armored frontal plate. The brutal, inescapable consequence, confirmed by the 48 destroyed Shermans, was that most American tank crews never survived long enough to close the distance necessary to even attempt an equal engagement. The Piper L-4H Grasshopper was engineered for one singular purpose: lightness and high-altitude, low-speed observation. It weighed a precise 765 pounds empty. Its maximum permissible takeoff weight was rigorously set at 950 pounds by the United States Army Air Forces, limiting its operational payload to a meager 232 pounds. This was the core logistical limitation that Carpenter had decided to ignore. He had authorized and personally overseen the installation of 6 M9 bazooka launchers, 3 positioned externally beneath the main load-bearing strut of each wing, which housed a total complement of 18 M6 A3 high-explosive anti-tank, or HEAT, rockets. The total parasitic weight added by this entire ordnance package 144 pounds, factoring in the 15-pound steel launcher tubes and the 18 3-pound projectiles, pushed the aircraft's laden weight to approximately 1,097 pounds. This was an uncertified, structurally compromising overload of nearly 90 pounds, placing immense and constant structural stress on the fragile, wooden airframe and its fabric skin. The technical modification was complex and precise. The 6 launchers were rigidly affixed to the main load-bearing struts, with a specific upward angle of 20 degrees relative to the aircraft's longitudinal flight axis. This angular setup was not arbitrary. It was a critical component of the anti-tank geometry. To achieve a 0-degree angle of impact with the ground target, the optimal alignment for the shaped charge effect, Carpenter had to commit the Grasshopper to an aggressive, sustained 35-degree nose-down dive. The net trajectory of the fired rocket would then be a crucial 15-degree downward slope, targeting the Panther's critically thin engine deck and turret roof armor, which typically measured only 16 to 30 millimeters in thickness. The M6A3 rocket, which weighed 3.38 pounds and traveled at a modest 265 feet per second, utilized a copper-lined shaped charge capable of forming a hypervelocity jet that could penetrate up to 4 inches of armor, making a hit on the upper plates catastrophic for the tank's internal systems. The electronic firing mechanism, jury-rigged in the tiny cockpit, allowed for the controlled, rapid-fire release of individual rockets, or, in moments of extreme urgency, a simultaneous full salvo. His crew chief, Staff Sergeant William O'Donnell, recognizing the sheer audacity and danger of the concept, aptly named the plane Rosie the Rocketer. The risks associated with this modification were extreme and continuously present. The L-4's wings were covered in highly flammable, nitrate-doped cotton fabric. The Bazooka rockets, upon ignition, produced a searing backblast of hot gases, reaching an estimated 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. No one knew with certainty whether the fabric could withstand the momentary, intense thermal shock without instantaneous combustion, turning the airplane into a pyre. Furthermore, the massive parasitic drag from the tubes and the extreme weight significantly raised the aircraft's critical stall speed from the safe 38 miles per hour to an estimated 45 miles per hour, dangerously reducing the safety margin during the crucial, high-stress pull-up maneuver required after firing. At 0642 hours, Carpenter initiated the first takeoff. The engine, the Continental 01703, rated for a maximum of 65 horsepower, audibly struggled under the weight. Its maximum rate of climb degraded from 6 to 100 feet per minute to a labored 4 to 100 feet per minute. He ascended to 1,500 feet, patient but anxious for the persistent fog to break. The added weight and drag rendered the once docile Grasshopper sluggish and demanding to control, constantly straining the limits of the wooden airframe. The fog finally dissipated enough to reveal a critical target area. Carpenter spotted a column of 6, possibly 7, Panther tanks moving southwest, 3 miles northeast of Arracourt. He checked his fuel gauge, calculating he had enough for 1 attack run and a 90-minute reserve for the return to base. He calculated his attack geometry, a high-speed, 35-degree dive, followed by a fire command at the critical distance of 1 to 100 meters, 109 yards. He climbed to 2,200 feet, utilizing the high, mid-morning sun behind him for maximum concealment, and pushed the nose of the Grasshopper over the horizon. The airspeed built rapidly to 90 miles per hour. At the 100-meter mark from the lead Panther, he pressed the firing switch for the right-wing outboard launcher. The M6A3 rocket ignited with a sharp, violent crack that severely shook the entire airframe. The searing jet of 1,200-degree exhaust shot backward, narrowly missing the highly flammable fabric wing. Carpenter immediately hauled back on the stick with maximum physical effort. The pull-up was slow and dangerously labored, demanding all of the aircraft's compromised authority. German infantry, alerted by the noise and the smoke trail, immediately opened fire with small arms. Rifle rounds snapped past the cockpit, with one round punching a clean hole through the left wing fabric. He circled back at 8 to 100 feet, flying a tight observation pattern, the lead Panther had stopped. A thick, telltale column of white smoke, suggestive of burning oil or coolant, rose from the engine deck, indicating a hit that had penetrated the vital components. It was immobilized and non-functional, but the immediate tactical objective was achieved. The entire German column was forced to scatter, halt its advance, and attend to the damaged vehicle. Carpenter had 17 rockets remaining, but the crucial element of surprise was now irrevocably gone, replaced by German vigilance. Carpenter landed at the improvised airstrip at 11:58 hours. The ground crew, including Staff Sergeant O'Donnell, confirmed that the fabric around the launchers was heavily scorched but miraculously intact, proving that the custom-designed metal channeling tubes had successfully protected the wing surface from immediate combustion. The process of reloading 6 expended tubes with fresh M6A3 rockets was completed in a rapid 14 minutes, a testament to the efficiency of the forward maintenance crew under extreme duress. Carpenter took off again at 12:19 hours, carrying 11.7 gallons of fuel and 12 rockets. He immediately recognized that the tactical environment had undergone a profound and dangerous transformation. He spotted a larger, more organized formation. 8 Panther tanks, supported by half-tracks east of the village of Bézange-la-Petite. He transmitted the coordinates to Combat Command A, but the reality of the 6 to 8 minute delay required for artillery ranging meant the mobile Panthers would be well out of the target zone before the first American shell landed. He elected to execute an immediate unsupported attack, understanding that time was a luxury he could not afford to grant the enemy. His second dive was met with immediate, concentrated opposition. The Germans had learned quickly to anticipate the high-angle attack. As he accelerated to 90 miles per hour, tracers from heavy machine guns arced toward him, converging on his flight path. A sharp, loud, metallic clang indicated a hit on the engine cowling near the forward oil cooler. The Continental engine sputtered once, a momentary, chilling loss of power, but it continued to run. Despite the incoming fire, he successfully fired the first rocket, immobilizing a second Panther. Lining up for a second pass against a Panther that had sought temporary cover, he was met with focused, dedicated anti-aircraft fire from organized infantry positions, likely utilizing the high rate of fire of the MG-42. The entire airframe shuddered violently under the multiple impacts. He fired his second rocket and pulled up sharply. Looking back, he confirmed the tank was not merely stopped, but violently burning, a confirmed kill. However, the cost to his aircraft was severe. The tail section had multiple fabric tears, and the rudder control felt noticeably mushy and delayed, indicating damage to the control cables and structural failure in the wooden framework of the tailplane. The strategic narrative pivoted into an immediate, profound, human crisis. A frantic radio transmission from Combat Command A reported that 4 Panther tanks had successfully bypassed the forward infantry positions and were closing rapidly on a trapped American waterpoint support crew, approximately 20 unarmed men 3 miles east of Arracourt. The support crew lacked anti-tank weapons and were completely defenseless against the rapidly advancing armor. Carpenter had a functionally failing aircraft, 7.2 gallons of fuel, and 10 rockets. The established military doctrine demanded an immediate return to base for assessment and repair. The moral imperative, born from his rage at the loss of 48 Sherman crews, was to intervene instantly. Carpenter turned his damaged Grasshopper east toward the threat. He quickly spotted the 4 Panther tanks, stationary for a moment, and actively traversing their turrets, waiting for him. They had fully anticipated the high dive attack seen in the earlier sorties, and had positioned their anti-aircraft assets accordingly, aimed high. Carpenter recognized the flaw in their defensive setup. They were not prepared for an attack from below. He executed a brilliant and highly dangerous piece of tactical deception, exploiting the limitations of German anti-aircraft gun elevation. He dropped his altitude to 2 to 100 feet, skimming the terrain and using a thick tree line for maximum concealment, flying well beneath the organized German anti-aircraft engagement envelope. He then executed a sudden, aggressive pop-up to 300 feet, immediately nosing over into a steeper than normal, 40-degree dive, presenting a non-standard attack angle. The engagement was instantaneous and required extreme physical effort to control the damaged, overstressed airframe. German infantry attempted to react, but Carpenter was already firing. The sequence of destruction was rapid and decisive, maximizing the concentration of shaped charge impact. 3rd Panther. At 130 meters, he fired 2 rockets. They converged on the critical thin points, the turret ring, and the engine deck armor. The tank immediately stopped, erupting in flames. 4th Panther. Destroyed. He armed 2 more rockets, fired at 110 meters. One struck the turret side at a low, 30-degree angle, achieving the necessary penetration and triggering a massive secondary explosion of the main gun ammunition. The turret was blown askew. 2 Panthers were destroyed in 90 seconds. 5th Panther, immobilized, fired 1 rocket. It struck the track assembly, tearing the track and halting the tank's advance, though its main gun remained operational. The final Panther, the most dangerous, was only 350 yards from the position of the trapped American crew. Carpenter's engine, subjected to extreme, sustained thermal stress and compromised by the bullet damage, seized completely for 2 full seconds, a moment of terrifying, absolute silence before violently sputtering back to life, running on its final remaining reserve of power. He armed his final 3 rockets on the right wing, preparing for a maximum firepower unbalanced salvo. He descended to an absolute minimum altitude of 150 feet, and at 120 meters, he fired all 3 rockets simultaneously. The massive, sudden, and unbalanced recoil force nearly ripped the right wing from the fuselage, causing the Grasshopper to instantly snap-roll violently to the left. The rockets converged on the Panther's side hull. The triple impact penetrations triggered a catastrophic internal explosion. The entire turret separated from the hull and was ejected 20 feet away. 4 Panthers stopped. 20 American soldiers were saved. The Grasshopper was now functionally dead. The engine, having seized and restarted under extreme terminal stress, failed irrevocably 3 miles from the airstrip due to total oil loss and thermal runaway. Carpenter was left gliding a structurally compromised, overweight aircraft with torn fabric, damaged controls, and severe aerodynamic limitations. He trimmed for the best possible glide speed of 65 miles per hour and aimed for a newly plowed field adjacent to the runway. He executed the landing flare, but the soft, uneven earth instantly grabbed the main wheels upon contact. The aircraft pitched violently forward, the propeller dug deep into the mud, and the L-4H flipped completely over, coming to rest inverted and crumpled. Carpenter, hanging upside down in his harness, was acutely aware of the risk of fire from the leaking, superheated high-octane gasoline. He managed to free himself from the inverted wreckage and rolled clear 20 yards before the ground crew arrived with fire suppression foam. The L-4H, Rosie the Rocketer, was a total write-off, destroyed in service, but the pilot walked away unscathed. The total cost of September the 20th, 1944. 3 sorties flown, 18 rockets expended, 4 Panther tanks permanently stopped, and 1 Piper L-4H Grasshopper destroyed. Carpenter, the former history teacher, had proven his radical anti-tank theory under the most extreme pressure imaginable. The Battle of Arracourt stabilized, ultimately confirming the American logistical and numerical superiority, with 2 to 100 German losses against 48 American tanks. Carpenter's single day of actions, however, provided a critical, disproportionate tactical intervention that prevented the catastrophic loss of a forward command post and numerous essential support personnel during the most vulnerable early phase of the engagement. 3 days later, he was issued a replacement L-4H, serial number 4330426, which was immediately and professionally modified with the same 6 M9 bazooka armament by Staff Sergeant O'Donnell and his dedicated team. Between September and December 1944, Major Charles Carpenter flew 63 more of these highly dangerous bazooka attack missions. His official record credited him with 6 total tanks destroyed, including 2 of the formidable 68-ton Tiger tanks. Vehicles utterly immune to standard American 75mm fire and 17 other armored vehicles, disabled or destroyed. The destruction of the Tiger tank, with its 100mm frontal armor, could only have been achieved by exploiting the thin 25mm roof armor, demanding a level of aerial accuracy that bordered on the impossible. The German command, recognizing the unprecedented threat posed by the harmless observation plane, reacted with immediate, significant tactical and doctrinal changes. They issued new standing orders requiring all ground units to immediately engage any L-4 on site, expending highly rationed anti-aircraft ammunition without hesitation. Infantry began carrying specialized anti-aircraft ordnance, and tank commanders dedicated spotters to the skies. They quickly dubbed him Der Verrückte Major, the Mad Major, a name that rapidly became a whispered legend among the American ground forces, embodying their refusal to accept defeat in the face of overwhelming technological disparity. Major Carpenter amassed a total of 110 combat sorties, emerging from the continuous metal and fire of the Western Front without a single physical wound attributable to the enemy. However, in early 1945, just as the war in Europe reached its violent climax, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, a terminal form of lymphoma. The military physicians, based on the medical knowledge of the time, gave the 32-year-old a maximum survival prognosis of 2 years. He was subsequently promoted to lieutenant colonel and received the Silver Star for Valor, the Bronze Star, and the Air Medal with multiple clusters. He returned to his home in Urbana, Illinois, and immediately resumed his career as a history teacher. He stubbornly refused to accept the 2-year medical prognosis. The 2-year deadline passed. The 5-year deadline passed. The 10-year deadline passed. Due to his unwavering resilience and the evolving medical science regarding Hodgkin's disease, Carpenter continued teaching history at Urbana High School for 20 full years after his terminal diagnosis. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Carpenter finally died on March the 22nd, 1966, at the age of 53, 21 years after his diagnosis, and a remarkable 19 years past the initial predicted survival window. He outlasted the cancer almost as resolutely as he had defied the German Panther tanks. His final L-4H, serial number 4330426, the last Rosie the Rocketer, was later discovered in 2017 in an Austrian aviation museum. Having somehow survived the war and subsequent decades in civilian service, its incredible military history unknown to its operators. It is now undergoing meticulous restoration, a project dedicated to preserving the memory of the history teacher who used mathematics, physics, and a touch of madness to rewrite the rules of aerial combat and save countless American lives.